Welcome to Heaven Awaits. My name is Leigh, and I narrate the near-death experiences of those who have died and have seen the other side. If you enjoy these videos, please consider hitting the thumbs up, subscribe, and bell icons to be notified of new content. Doing so is free, and it does help the channel grow. Get comfortable, grab a cup of coffee or tea, and let's dive into today's experiences. On August 25th, 1998, I had spinal surgery to correct flatback syndrome, a condition caused by the Harrington rods I had placed in my spine to correct scoliosis some 20 years before. My surgery was planned to be 2 procedures lasting approximately 10 to 12 hours, where my surgeons were to access the back and later front of my body. 5 hours into the posterior procedure, something went wrong. I started to have excessive bleeding. To try to stabilize me, the doctors started to give me large amounts of fluids, blood, and blood byproducts. When it was all over, I had received 9 liters of saline, 15 units of blood, platelets, albumin, clotting factors, and fresh frozen plasma. Still, my heart rate was 240 beats per minute, and my blood pressure was only 70 palp. My lungs filled with fluid, and I was drowning. My doctors terminated the procedure and were not sure whether I would survive. I awoke many times that night choking on the fluid in my lungs, needing to have it suctioned out. The next morning, I know it was morning because I could see the sunlight from the windows in my room. I was looking around when a very strange feeling overcame me. At first, I felt a bit cold, especially in my legs. The coldness seemed to start there and move up my body. Once the coldness covered me, a feeling of peace, comfort, and love encompassed me. I had never felt anything like this before. There are no words to describe just how I felt. It was the absolute best feeling I had ever experienced. I closed my eyes and was immersed in a state of total peace. I had no pain. I could no longer feel the respirator breathing for me. I no longer felt my many incisions, nor was I any longer aware of having my hands tied to the bed. It was as if none of what had happened to me existed. All the tubes and drains, all the machines and noise were gone. God then started talking to me. He told me all that had gone wrong. He told me just how sick I was. He told me he knew I had wanted to end my life before the surgery, and that he understood how much pain, disability, and depression I had suffered. He let me know he was very aware of how hard I had fought. He offered me a choice. He told me he had come to me to show me what death was like, that there was nothing to be afraid of. He said the way I was feeling would be how I would feel for all of eternity. He told me all the pain and suffering would be over. I could rest if I were to follow him. The feeling was so wonderful, so peaceful, so calm, so perfect. The other choice was that I could return to the world and work my way through the pain and the long recovery. If I decided to do that, he said he would always be with me and nothing else would go wrong. It was my choice to make. He did make it clear that whatever I decided, he would stand by me. He was satisfied, and I could be also, that I had tried my best. I was so overwhelmed by this wonderful state, there was no way I was going to turn my back on it. Yes, I was ready to die. Yes, I had had enough. Yes, I had fought the best fight I could, and was more than willing to follow and enjoy this fantastic new experience. He then instructed me to just close my eyes. Funny, they were already closed, but I did as instructed and imagined them closing. Just as my lids were coming together, the face of my 8-year-old daughter flashed in front of my eyes. I had had a brief thought of my husband before that, but I discounted it immediately. He was a grown man, and though my leaving him would be hard, he would be able to survive without me. My daughter, no, she couldn't. My eyes flew open in my mind and I started to scream in my head, "No, I will not leave my children alone." Do not ask me how I know, but at that moment God smiled at me. I didn't see a face, but I felt the smile and its warmth radiate through my whole body. God had not influenced me directly. He had let me make my own decision. Maybe he put the image of my daughter before my eyes. I will never know. All I do know is he was happy with my decision, and I could feel it. I had become rather self-centered before the surgery. The struggle to live was my entire focus, and my family had taken a back seat. The warmth stayed with me for a short time. Then suddenly, with a jolt, I could hear and feel all the machines again. The pain had returned. My hands were tied. The respirator whooshed. I opened my eyes and could see the hospital room. The first real day of my long recovery had begun. I spent several more days on the respirator till the fluid cleared from my lungs. A week after the first surgery, I returned to the operating room and they finished the anterior portion. I bled again and needed 6 more units of blood, but I knew I was in no real danger. God was present all of the time, watching over me. I went home from the hospital 4 days post-op to celebrate my daughter's 9th birthday. Then 3 weeks post-op, while rolling over in bed, I dislocated 2 discs in my neck. I returned to the hospital. This pain was terrible and nothing controlled it. They tried morphine and trigger point injections. I screamed at God that he had lied to me. I was angry and very disappointed in him. He had not told me the whole truth. He had said my recovery would be long and hard. He had told me it was going to take all my strength to accomplish, but he had said nothing else would go wrong, and here I was 3 weeks post-op and in terrible shape, looking at another fusion surgery. How could he let this happen? How could he have abandoned me so soon? It took me months to realize he had not abandoned me at all. He was reminding me. I had been treated to a special gift. I had lived through it and forgotten about it as soon as it was over. I had not learned my lesson. I was embarrassed to tell others what had happened to me. I thought it was hokey. Being an ER nurse, I had always wondered if near-death experiences were real, and here I had had one and wanted to forget about it. Finally, I spoke to the hospital chaplain. She told me indeed what I had experienced was just what I thought it was. We talked for a long time. Still, it took me many more months before I could tell others or share my experience. God and I have had many discussions since that time, many good ones and many angry ones. The hard part of my recovery took over 2.5 years. I am now almost 4 years post-op and still struggle some days, but have come to terms with my new life and the fact that I have a very special relationship with God. I have returned to work, doing clinical research, and have told some of my patients, their families, and other staff members about what happened to me, assuring those facing possible death that there is nothing to fear. The comfort I see in their faces as I describe the sensations and peace as my tears flow down my cheeks is what I was meant to do with my return. I reassure them that grieving is for the living, not the dead. We all miss those we lose. That pain is real, but those who go with God enjoy a state few of us living will ever know. That does it for our first experience. Our second experience is a little different, as it is an after-death communication. Let's get into it. I sat at my desk recording the week's stack of resumes when someone behind me shoved their jagged nails into the small of my back. The pain radiated into my kidneys. Even the natural childbirth I'd experienced recently couldn't compete with the debilitating strangeness of this attack. The intensity pushed me forward, and I gripped the edge of the desk. I needed it to let up. I didn't think I could stand it much longer. And then it was over. I took a deep breath and looked around. The clock on the wall showed 2:30 p.m. As I sat there, uneasy at the thought that the pain might return, I felt grateful that I could go home in 2 hours. I waited for the pain to return, wondering what could be going wrong with me that would cause such an onset of vicious discomfort. The pain didn't return, and I finished out the day, retrieved my infant daughter from the babysitter, and headed home. In light of that episode, I asked my husband to watch the baby while I took a short rest, thinking maybe that's what my body was trying to tell me. Working moms pull out all sorts of stops to cover both the work front and the home front, and I do believe our bodies tell us when we've pulled out a few too many stops. We need to pay attention to the messages. Several hours later, I opened my eyes, feeling wonderful yet a bit guilty as I had slept way longer than I intended. My husband pushed the bedroom door open, our baby girl on his hip. "Are you awake yet?" His tone was flat, and I thought he was upset because I slept so long. We hadn't had supper. The baby probably had been fussing, and I hadn't attended to any of it. And yet, it wasn't in his nature to begrudge or complain about things like that. But something was on his mind. "Yeah, I'm awake. What have you two been up to?" He came and sat on the edge of the bed next to me. The room was dark and I couldn't see his face. "Is something wrong?" I asked him. "Your mother called. Elmer had a heart attack." I sat up straight. Dad had a heart attack? When? Where is he? What hospital did they take him to? I asked, kicking my legs over the side of the bed as if my hurrying to get out of bed and get my shoes on was going to get me to him any quicker. He's not in the hospital. My brain took a moment to process this fact, and it made no sense to me, of course. A person has a heart attack. The ambulance races them to the closest hospital. All the doctors and nurses come running, and eventually, the patient is stabilized and moved to their room, right? He didn't make it, Beck. A quick hug and he and the baby left me alone with this, and my mind wrestled with those thoughts that bombard a person when they receive such news. He wasn't even 62 yet. He couldn't die. Was this happening? Downstairs, I asked my husband why he didn't wake me up when my mother called. She said to let you sleep. There wasn't anything to be done. She'll call you later tonight. When did it happen? Earlier this afternoon. My father died in Minnesota, just over the state line from Iowa, and Minnesota state law at the time required an autopsy. The coroner's report arrived several weeks later. I had to look every other word up in my medical dictionary, but the gist of the matter was summed up in terms I understood. Blockage noted on such and such scar tissue was observed indication of a possible earlier episode. Death was instantaneous. What was it he'd told me at Christmas about feeling suddenly dizzy and having to lie down on the car seat until the sensation passed? He thought maybe he'd taken in carbon monoxide while waiting for my mother to finish her shopping. There it was at the end of the report. The thing I'd been wondering about ever since they told me he died in the middle of the day. The official time of death on record, 2:30 p.m. That does it for today's experiences. As always, let me know what you thought in the comment section below. Until next time, stay safe and continue to be blessed.